Hello and welcome, Green Thumbs. Christian here from 321garden.com, and we're going to teach you how to hedge trim. To allow yourself the best results possible, you will require the following tools: bin, orchard ladder, rake, jerry can with mixed gas, lubrication, hedge trimmer, blower, gloves, eye protection, and ear protection. Using the right tools will save you time and ultimately help you do a better job. Before you begin trimming your hedges, it's very important to know what your desired end look is. Are you going for a formal or informal look and feel? A formal hedge has straight lines, either perfectly square or perfectly curved lines, just like a traditional French garden. An informal hedge has a much more relaxed look, such as a country English style. With the hedge we're trimming, we have decided to trim back the hedge to the edge of the sidewalk and trim 8 to 10 inches off the inside of the hedge, opening up more of the garden beds below. The laurel hedge has grown much more in open sunlight versus the section of hedge growing under the tree. If your hedge is at the desired height you like, use the lowest spot as your height marker for the entire hedge to allow the final height of the hedge to be perfect and level. It is ideal to get a closer look at the inside of the hedge. Gently pull the hedge apart and look inside to see how far the growth goes into the hedge. With this laurel, we can cut it back as far as we like and it will grow back no problem. But in the case of a cedar hedge, you cannot cut past the growth, as it is likely never to grow back. If the hedge has been trimmed in the past, you will be able to see the cut marks and where the new growth starts. This can be a marker if you are happy with the height in the past trimmings. This laurel hedge is trimmed once a year and has grown as much as 2 feet in some areas. Most owners of laurel hedges recommend trimming hedges 2 times per year to allow for a more shapely hedge. The 2 best times to trim a laurel hedge is in June and then again at the end of October. By trimming the hedge in the late fall, your hedge will stop growing and keep looking great all through the winter months. From years of experience, we have learned that it is much more cost-effective and straightforward to use a gas-powered hedge trimmer versus an electric one, which is low in power and often difficult to use when attached to a cable running down the driveway. A gas-powered hedge trimmer can be rented at any equipment rental place, or you can always opt to purchase your own. If so, make sure you pay a little bit extra and purchase a good quality unit. The fuel required for the hedge trimmer needs to be mixed with 2-stroke oil. Most of the equipment rental places will supply you with a mixed can, or can help you mix your own can. Okay, let's fill the hedge trimmer. If you've never used a jerry can before, start by unscrewing the cap counterclockwise, then pull out the spout and take off the screw lid. Turn the spout around and then screw the cap with the spout back onto the jerry can. Open the gas cap on the hedge trimmer counterclockwise, then fill and shut the gas cap as tightly as possible. Now we can lubricate the cutting blades of the hedge trimmer. Give a good spray to both sides of the cutting blades. Now we can start the hedge trimmer. First is to prime the engine. Push in the little clear plastic bubble 5 to 10 times to make sure that the engine is well primed with fuel. Now flick the choke switch to the choke setting. Turn the engine switch to on. With your weight on the machine, pull the pull cord and trigger till the engine turns over. The machine will turn itself off. Now turn the choke setting to the run. Then pull the pull cord again and the hedge trimmer should be running regularly now. Give a few pulls to the throttle and let the machine warm up. Totally essential is the use of eye protection and ear protection. You never know if twigs or debris will be thrown your way, so always play it safe. It is important to get comfortable holding and working with the hedge trimmer. Hold the trimmer with both hands, making sure you get a good grip on the handle and pole of the trimmer. Try pulling the finger throttle a few times, and also practice setting and unsetting the running lock, which allows the machine to run without having to keep your finger on the throttle the whole time. This can be very helpful as it allows more flexibility in use with the hedge trimmer. Please take note that when you use the running luck, you are aware of your surroundings and especially the cutting end of the hedge trimmer, as we want to stay calm and always eliminate accidents. Now that you are running and holding the trimmer, there are a few essential techniques. Always try and keep your lead elbow, the one facing the cutting blades, into your side to allow you to keep a solid stance. Try pivoting the trimmer cutting blade forward, up and down in a controlled motion. Once you get the motion, you're ready to start trimming the hedge. However, before we start, let's review. When trimming a hedge, we like to start by trimming the sides and then the top. In order to get a straight-sided hedge, there are a few ways to do it. You can use marker poles as a guide, or if the hedge is not as long as our laurel hedge is, we should be able to cut it by eye, standing back occasionally to review our work. We have found it helpful to have visual markers, may it be a window of a house or a tree branch, that we can use as visual markers to keep our cuts on track. Okay, let's get started. It's much easier to trim a hedge starting from right going to left. So start by trimming the bottom right corner of a hedge, trimming within 2 inches of the goal depth trim. Slowly and with your elbows into your body, move the hedge trimmer's blade end up and down along the hedge, keeping the cutting blades flat to the hedge and always away from yourself. At regular intervals, it is essential to stand back and make sure that the cut is lining up properly. Keep working your way along the side of the hedge. With laurel hedges, large leaves, you may find it helpful to use a gentle turning of your wrists to allow the cutting blades of the hedge trimmer to cut the stem of leaves that you find difficult to cut. Trim a straight line all the way to the top of the hedge. Once you have finished one side of the hedge, you can start the other side if required. Again, making sure that you start on the other corner of the hedge, always going from right to left. On this side, we have the sidewalk as a guide, which makes it much easier to trim. After you have done the sides, I like to be extra picky and slowly trim over the sides, checking the smoothness, taking any leaves that are outside of the imaginary but ideal hedge boundary. Make sure that you square up and then round the edges of the end of the hedge. Now that we have both sides done, we can tackle the top of the hedge. It is always best if you can avoid leaning into the hedge. You could fall through, but also it can mess up the newly trimmed shape. Depending on the height of your hedge, you can often use your orchard ladder as a guide to help you keep the correct level. If the hedge is within standing height, bring the trimmer up to shoulder height, using the weight of the hedge trimmer to counterbalance the side-to-side motion of your trimming. Once you have started trimming into the top of the hedge, step back after you have moved every 2 or 3 feet to recheck the level of the finished trimming height. You can also use the hedge trimmer itself as a level guide, placing the back end of the hedge trimmer on the top of the hedge and sweep back and forth to bring the hedge to the required level. When you come to a point where the ladder is required, please make sure you are using the correct orchard ladder for the job and stay safely below the last 2 top rungs of the ladder. Again, the ladder can be rented from the same equipment rental company as the hedge trimmer. When setting up your ladder, placement is essential. It is easier to cut the top of the hedge from right to left, so place your orchard ladder step side to the right and pole to the left. This will allow an open space to work from. It is also important to know a simple rule for setting the correct safe angle of the ladder. By standing with your feet at the base of the ladder facing forward, outreach your arm and it should be just within touching of the ladder. Adjust accordingly. Also make sure that the pole of the ladder is firmly in the ground and all debris are removed from under its point. Keep your body centered on the ladder and avoid any leaning off to the side of the ladder. Hold the trimmer in a comfortable position, ideally around hip height, smoothly rotating side to side. As you go, you can idle the hedge trimmer and pick off your cut branches from the top of the hedge. It is also possible to use the hedge trimmer as a tool for pushing off bigger cut branches. You will need to go up the ladder each section with a rake to get the majority of the cuttings off the top of the hedge. When raking the top of the hedge, you can often cause the other stems or branches to stick up, now ruining our straight lines. You can return with the hedge trimmer for minor touch-ups. Once you have made it to the end of the trimming, there is still 2 more details to trim. Now is when we gently round the top corner of the hedge, as well as round out the bottom edge of the hedge, giving a clean line against the garden beds or sidewalks. With the hedge trimmer, hold it on an angle and slowly walk from right to left, gently curving the top edge and then finally the bottom edge of the hedge. Now that we've completed all final detailing of the hedge trimming, we can now do the final cleanup. Rake into piles and rake out all the old dead leaves that have built up over time under the hedge. We can now either put the clippings into brown paper garden bags for the green waste to pick up, or by taking the debris to the local green waste station. I would advise the use of a small blower or use a broom to clean up the debris from the lawn and sidewalk. So there you have it. With this advice, you should be able to get out there and take on the hedges in your yard. Thank you for choosing 321garden.com as your go-to gardening partner. Please tell your friends about us, and we'll see you tomorrow. 3,